Okay. So for whatever reason, my laptop has decided to become hardy, even just in regular things. It's just takes have to reinstall, do a clean install. I've done that a couple of times. It doesn't help. Anyway, so long and the short is I finally got it working there. All right. So Bina and I were talking something that's come up with that poem that I'm working on. The Me of Then poem with the Isle of the Dead and the journey into the realm of mourners and all this. And something that I sort of realized that's been lingering in the back of my mind for a long time. And to back it up a little bit, to make a long story out of a short story, since that's the intent today, right? We're going to make long stories. We can do the reverse. With awareness, we need to have two in order to be self-aware, correct?
Right.
All right. So we're at least two. We may have more, but at least two. However, I was thinking, or it came up, that this does not apply to spirit.
Mm.
I don't think the very nature of spirit says, no, you can't have two. So spirit materializes into body and through the effects, right? Spirit body is the representation of spirit. Through that representation, spirit becomes aware of what it is.
Okay.
Right, let's look at it a different way and use the computer model once again and say, all right, what are the equivalents of this? So, which is our thinking. Yes, this is also the operating system, but to be more precise, the operating system is equivalent to the more obvious conscious or parts of the operating system that we do see working, as opposed to the subconscious parts of the process of operating system, right? So, when we are running things, our consciousness, we could say, is more like the programs, and the operating system is more like spirit, or is, right?
Oh, wow. Is the video
So
going or is the audio off?
you can't have two operating systems. Well, you can, but not running simultaneously. Yes. Say again.
You're breaking. You're
Oh,
breaking
I'm
still.
frozen.
Okay. Yeah. I
Yeah,
couldn't
yeah.
tell.
Hold on. Let me.
Mind.
Yeah. I'm just going to change the node and see. And also, I was looking at your video on the phone because it was closer, and I think it being front and center makes it a little slower. All right. Let's see. Yeah, I should be okay on my connection. All right. So let me just put all that off there and then continue. All right. So if we look at the operating system as spirit, it starts to make a bit more sense. Yes. Because consciousness, the awareness, which you can say, okay, the brain is the CPU, this is hardware, and the CPU runs program. You've got RAM, which is your random access memory, short-term memory, all of this stuff. This is more the brain and consciousness. Yes. So consciousness is something which is on top of spirit. It's an outflow of spirit. And also consciousness is something that comes from the hardware. Yes. So if we think of spirit as the operating system, this can exist without it necessarily being actually implemented on a computer, as the software can exist somewhere, like out on the internet, for instance. Yes. Which the internet now will become, the representation of the spiritual realm. All right, but nonetheless, and then you take the BIOS and CMOS, they both basically the same part of the same system, and make them to be the soul. Now, yes, all analogies of this type are somewhat, inaccurate. So we have to keep this in mind, yes? that these aren't going to be exactly 100% fulfill our requirements. However, when we start to think of it a bit more and we say, okay, so our operating system is spirit, and the operating system also goes with our consciousness. They somewhat interact and overlap. But the main part is consciousness, since it's running programs, it can run programs, two of the same programs at the same time, basically to get a reflection, can monitor program and so on. But the operating system can't do this. However, it can see its effectiveness, gauge how it is, and get feedback via its connectivity to the physical stuff, how well the things are working, and not just the physical in terms of, okay, your printer, your camera, whatever, but also in terms of the software. So spirit can get some feedback on itself via consciousness. Yes? Does that make sense? All right. So I'm just saying this is a really profound point here, that the physicality, including the brain and including the what is the results of the brain, these are all mechanisms that give spirit feedback on itself, and thereby spirit can adjust and adapt and tweak and upgrade. And this is a big deal. And not to confuse programs fine tuning themselves for the fine tuning and updating and upgrading and evolution of spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Yes? Would you say this is a very, very big deal?
Yeah, for sure.
Because now in the story, in the poem story, the aspirant comes to that portal, right, on the island there, because the aspirant is sort of jumping into the queue here a little bit, because the aspirant made such a point of essentially letting go of the me of then, right? So this is the coffin is bringing to this. So because it essentially killed off the me of then and said, "Begone, ye ghosts." Okay, so there's no real connection to the me of then. It's free of the me of then. So hence it came onto this journey. Well, now you've got to do something with the me of then. It's in the coffin. Okay, this is the final stage, and it brings it to this. Just the evolutionary process, I guess, right? The evolution of awareness, consciousness, learning and growth. So that's how come it's there, because it's, it didn't let go of the past when it died in the regular sense, just the past died. That's why it's there as me of now. Okay, so yeah, it gets to the island, but now it all says, because it's done this and it's still alive, something, it needs to go to the next stage, which is the me of when, or future me. So now it sees this portal and it's now to cross into this stage. However, the me of when, or future me, and present me, they can't exist separately. They really have to exist together, right? So the idea is that now the three trees, they need to, the me of then, they're actually one. So you have to take connectivity to your past and your future and the now, and make it all into one. And this is the whole idea of spiritual existence. Yeah, because spiritual existence is going to exist out of time. So the story goes, at least within the mythology of the story, and it draws on some very real, actual. It's not necessarily mythology, but worldviews, or cosmic or spiritual understandings. So now it's to cross over into that spiritual plane, right? To do this consciously and deliberately, not to have it forced on one with normal, usual death, because then, well, you know what? You don't know what's going on, and now you sort of lost. All right. So this is the portal is where you can deliberately do this. So the portal is this, as this deserty plain, this windy deserty plain, and as the that you've got to cross to go from one side to the other side. It's a barrier, in other words, and there's a reason for the barrier. Why isn't it just a portal and you step through and okay, you're in the spirit? Why the necessity for a barrier? Because the barrier becomes a testing, proving ground, right? Whereas it forces you to have what's needed in order to get there. So
Mm.
as the aspirant starts to take a few steps, they realize, oh, I'm getting heavier. There's more resistant with each step. And because they're already in the habit of anticipation and extrapolation, they see that at this rate, I'm not going to get to the other side. So they turn back and they go back, right? Much like if you're going to go on a walk in the desert, and when you get to halfway through your water, you turn back,
Mm.
right? Or slightly before that, right? So they gauge their energy and say, oh, at this rate, never mind getting to the other side. It's definitely not going to happen, and I can't even venture further to explore because I won't be able to get back. So they turn back, and now they get to talk even more with the assistant, who starts to explain that, and they also figure it out for themselves that that resistance is residual things that are still within, that are on that sphere of physicality, right? Even though on this plane you are sort of semi spirit, that your spirit, if it's clinging to material existence or desires or beliefs in any way, any belief is a potential physical materialization. Yes.
Mm.
Right?
Interesting.
Because it's something that you believe should be, or a desire or a want. They are all essentially things that are wanting to materialize, yes, or supposed to or should materialize. So they become resistances for you to go towards spiritual because they're pulling you back into the material. So
Mm.
this crossing of this plane, this desert sulfurous yellow plane, right? Which people confuse for hell, but okay, it is a testing mechanism to see how much you've let go of all of the things which pull you into material existence.
Mm.
Yes. So this is the key point. And then the aspirant says, you know what? I've come to a really profound understanding and awareness. One, the main one here is that me knowing what I need to do and understanding what I need to do and being aware of it is not enough, right? And she makes a point of saying, for instance, um, in terms of, so let's say, mood management. I can mood manage. I do mood manage. I can hold my mood. I can institute my mood at will. I can change my mood at will. However, as long as it is something that I need to rely on my will to do or my consciousness to do, it's not going to be something which is innate and automatic.
Right.
And this is a problem because it's relying on consciousness and awareness, which is relying on the brain, which is relying on physicality.
Okay. Yeah.
It's thus not coming directly from spirit. It's not innate that I'm automatically in a mood that allows me to appropriately adjust as now,
Mm.
or that I'm in a mood of impeccability, for instance, which that's it. It's a default mood. It can deal with anything. So this getting to the point where we feel it inside our spirit as the default, that I don't have to put it on. I'm there all the time. This is the requirement. So now the aspirant says, look, I failed to cross the plane, and here's my task. My task is to make these knowings, these understandings, these awarenesses, these discernments, to make them fully innate, and to make them not only innate, but default. The two have to go together, right? So that it's a program that's running all of the time, not some of the time. Yes. So that I change my default way of feeling to basically that feeling of impeccability or
Sarah.
the feeling of rightness,
Sarah.
which is a
Stop.
feeling of completeness. What's she doing? Licking her paws?
No, she's eating things off the floor, which for her is a very dangerous thing to do.
Ah,
She has so many gut
so
problems.
right. So to that last part, I was saying, It's so that we are feeling the way we wish to feel, and it's coming from spirit, not from software, not
Mm-hmm.
from, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, but and the equivalent is that we are feeling it in our body, that we are feeling fully right, we are feeling impeccable physically in the entirety of our body, not just something that is we are consciously implementing and instituting as we would. So this feeling of rightness, in other words, of completeness, of independence of being, in other words, a feeling which does not need any other feelings. This is the feeling that you wish for your spirit to have, no?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it's the feeling of not only peace of being, but the feeling of completeness. And this is now purging also all of wants and desires, all of those that don't lead to that. Because anytime you have a want, it's by default saying you're feeling incomplete,
Right.
needing something else to add to you. Yes. So this feeling of completeness is the feeling that spirit needs in order to cross the plane and be able to exist as spirit, because spirit needs to be complete. Yes.
Right.
If it's going to exist in a spiritual realm, it needs to have cohesiveness, and this is why we are here and have the body. So you're always feeling and looking for what you need, and through that we figure out what it is we need to have for completeness. Yes. So it's, and there may be false starts or not, but this is the task. That is the overall task, and this is obviously the task of Wave Impeccability and Mourners Project. Yeah. But it's key to understand it's not just about the understanding and awareness. It also has to be taken all the way into the body and
Right.
felt, because the body is the representation of spirit.
Right.
This is a big deal. This is a big
Yeah.
deal. Oh, it's crushing my heart a little bit to see you a little bit down like this.
Yeah.
How
My
did you know? How did you know? Just to jump a little bit here, because I feel what we're doing is sucking a lot of energy, and I want to just leave it there as something to sit and think and consider about as you recover.
Yeah,
Um,
this is a topic that is, I mean, this fits right in with a lot of other things that I'm reading, learning about. It's something I'm super interested in, but I'm majorly battling brain fog through
Exactly,
all of this.
exactly. And I
Um,
don't want to stress you. I'm really thrilled you're here, and I'm thrilled that you came. But I want to just basically we'll have a shorter session today, and maybe Bina can share some stuff as well. What things that you were reading and connecting to connect to this beside the sutras?
yeah, the sutras, really all of Richard Rohr's books fit
Hmm.
very much into this category. And he talks a lot about the integration of spirit and body. And he has an interesting, and I have an interesting perspective with this topic because growing up in Christian Science, um, Mom and I have had multiple conversations about this. I don't think that this was what the founder of Christian Science intended. Like, it didn't feel right to me at the time, and as an adult, like, the more I've thought about it, I really don't think that's what she was intending. I think this was something that came into things with intervention from other people as time went on. But there was very much a, like, denial of the body and sort of, um, not fear exactly, but it was like there was sort of this idea that, well, the body is all, like, basically anything physical, anything to do with the body is an illusion. That's not real. The real part is the spiritual part. And so basically you should just, like, if you're worried about anything to do with your body, then you're not in the right frame of mind. So you should, like, not ever really talk about your body. You shouldn't be worried about your body. And I don't think that's what the founder intended at
Hmm.
all, but that's what kind of came to be. And so I've always had, I grew up with this very um, kind of skewed understanding of the relationship between spirit and body. And so um,
Interesting.
Richard Rohr takes a really interesting perspective on it, from obviously, since he's the Franciscan friar, he approaches it from a biblical, like Christian
Wow.
biblical perspective, where he in this last book I've been reading, he was talking about Jesus' resurrection and how it's interesting and kind of telling that he comes back to his physical form.
Mm.
Like, it's not just like, oh, I overcame death. Like, I'm
Yeah.
up here now and, whatever. Like, he came back into his body to show that his divine self was present in his body.
Yeah.
The divine
Yeah.
self that overcame death was now present in a body. And that,
Yes.
the point being, all of us are the same. And so he talks a lot about not kind of not discounting the importance of the body
Yes.
in the overall chain of things. A book I read recently by Ken Wilber talks about a very similar thing. And then I'm reading, Kathy gave me a book a while ago, actually several, that I'm finally getting caught up on. Now that I have COVID, I have time to sit down and
Oh,
like actually read physical books, which I usually don't. And this one is really interesting. Waking the Tiger, Healing Trauma. And it's all
mhm.
about, like, the forward is super interesting, where he talks about um, how I've just barely started it, but in the forward, he talks about traumatic events or things that would be considered traumatic happen in the animal kingdom all the time.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
I mean, as part of their normal lives,
Right.
right? Like
Wow. Wow.
without
Wow.
human interference, as
Right.
part of just an animal's normal life, there's a
Right.
lot of things that could be considered traumatic, but we don't typically see signs of
Correct.
trauma in
Yes.
animals when they're just living their normal day-to-day lives. And he
Yeah.
was saying that his theory, and this, I think this book was written in 95, and the science was kind of just coming out to support this at this point. He was saying that he feels that a big part of not only overcoming trauma, but sort of avoiding trauma in the first place when you encounter something that could be traumatic
Yeah.
is to allow the body to do, he thinks the body plays a huge role in that, and that there's a
Yes. Yes.
physicality
Yes.
factor in this that often gets overlooked. Like, usually with trauma, it's all mental, and you're talking about psychology, you're talking about revisiting these events and thinking about them in a different way, but that a big part of it is a mind body connection,
Yes.
and that there's a huge body component to not only overcoming trauma but preventing trauma from happening in the first place. And that if we look at how that works in the animal kingdom, we can kind of also surmise how that works in us as well. And he has all of these, I think he has all of these kind of case studies where they talk about different things that people have done. And this is what Kathy does with me in large part with breath work. There's a physical component to my process with her where you work on releasing things that are held within your body, things that, like tensions, inappropriate tensions, things like that, that have not, we don't think about consciously releasing those things.
Yes.
So it's
Right.
really
Right.
interesting. All ties in
And
together.
that tension management, I've spoken about it before, to repurpose it and restructure it and understand it, get inside it. It's very powerful stuff. Very
Hmm.
powerful stuff. Very, very powerful stuff. So to continue on with the aspirant's journey and understanding. So uh, the aspirant shares with Limo a profound awareness that's been there, but now it starts to take on shape and context and make sense. And she says, what is the point and purpose of our thinking? I'm asking, what is the point and purpose in a most absolute overall overview perspective point of view? Why? Why do we think? What are we looking to accomplish and achieve?
In a most abstract point of view. Um, I'm trying to
Say
think.
what comes first, and then we'll see.
Well, I'm
Then we'll
trying
see.
to think of like I'm trying to keep zooming out and thinking like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
what's the point of that? I mean,
I was just going to say, maybe share the intermittent points, and then we can then just say, okay, what next? And we'll just follow the path.
the first thing that comes to me is for like I don't even know what I'm looking for. Maybe curiosity that it
There you
helps us
go. Okay, to
learn,
satisfy
grow,
curiosity.
experience,
Yeah.
understand, whatever.
Right. And all of that, you could say, all right, at first, the thinking is there to help us to survive. Yes.
Right, from a base
Right.
level for sure.
Right. Base level. So we could do that whole long sequence. So survival, then you start to survive better and better, and you start developing community and collaboration and so on. And then you start to say, well, what about evolution? Now, what does evolution get you? Evolution shifts the survival because now we are looking at comfortable survival, not just surviving, but comfortable survival. The paradigm has changed, right? Now evolution becomes comfortable survival. And what does comfort entail? Pleasure, joy, etc. Yes. So now we are looking towards the objective is that comfort or joy or pleasure. In other words, feeling. Yes. Survival doesn't care about feeling. Base survival says this is your imperative is to stay alive. Whether you are having fun or not is irrelevant. Yes. And you see this in many systems in the animal kingdom, hierarchical systems. Pretty much nobody's really having a good time except for short periods of time. Overall, it sucks, right? But it doesn't matter. The imperative to survive is there. It's like a pressure to get through this phase of things, right? It overrides your happy feeling, right? The desire to survive. You're willing to put up with all sorts of horrible stuff. Yes. Are you okay, Erica?
My throat just talking aggravates my throat, so I'm
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
just
Okay. No
recovering from
problem. You
talking.
just not. Yeah. Yeah. I know. I've got the same thing going on at the moment, in a mild form, but yeah, just from my tonsils. Anyway, so So now we say the more we get on the scale of evolution, the more we are looking to feel more. And we forget this though, because the more sophisticated our thinking becomes, we get lost in the idea of conceptions and intellectual stuff. And we get caught up in the idea that thinking is its own purpose. It's not. The purpose of all thinking is to get you to feel. And when you start to think in terms of superlative feelings, rapture, elation, bliss, ecstasy, communion, interconnectedness, oneness, all of this, they are all a feeling. Nirvana is a feeling. It is the ultimate conglomeration of feelings. And this is forgotten, I think. We say, oh, we want to get to nirvana or bliss or heaven, but isn't heaven an ultimate state where everything you're feeling the most that it can be? So the most positive conglomeration. So when we think of our spiritual quest, it is precisely to learn to feel. And now when we see the body as the representation of spirit, it makes sense because the body is what feels, but we want to use this to get the spirit to find how to feel its superlative ultimate feelings. And that's what I was saying earlier. That feeling of completeness is, if that can be held, this is something that the spirit can take and basically have that feeling of completeness, which includes all of the feelings that you want to have as appropriate and the ability to feel them as appropriate. This can exist on its own without the need for the constant updating, right? So if you're going to exist in an eternal longer term situation, wouldn't you want to exist in a state where you are always feeling the most that you can possibly feel, right? And it's just over and over. And when time starts to cease to exist, you in this ultimate feeling, and it doesn't matter. It can be forever or just 1 second, doesn't matter, right? So because spirit time doesn't exist, you want to be in that state. And this is the point of our physical existence. It is to learn to feel, and thinking is to learn to feel. This we forget. The purpose and point of thinking is to learn to feel appropriately, which comes with the trauma. It's just you're not learning to feel appropriately, not letting it go. And it's, with trauma, you get a cueing which says this is traumatic and this is not survivable and this is a big deal. And it's a thinking loop that goes over and over. It's, in other words, an inappropriate emphasis in the brain that has made a thinking bubble, and the person is stuck in that thinking bubble. Yes, because typically they do not know how to process they have no database for what to do with a feeling when somebody next to you's head gets blown off, like in war. How am I supposed to feel, right? And they don't take the obvious to say, well, it is what it is and that's it, because this makes them feel like they're uncaring and callous and all of the other things that society says you cannot feel. It's supposed to be horrible, supposed to be horrible, etc., etc. And now they get stuck in cued supposed to be. Right? When you look at people who do survive wars like that, they say, well, that's what it was. And they almost have a detachment to it. Like, you might even think of them as a bit callous, but this is the way to survive it. Now, when you look at animals and how they deal with that same trauma, right? Of, okay, your sister got eaten by the lion, and it ripped their throat out. This is horrible, but they just accept it as part of the life. They don't think of it as horrible. Correct? It's just is what it is. Yes, it's to be avoided, but it's not considered traumatic. Yes.
Right. Yeah. As far as we
So
know.
it's really interesting. So we have to be very cautious of association management, in other words, and cueing when it comes to trauma, because that's how trauma comes about. Inappropriate associations, inappropriate cueing. Yes, inappropriate belief systems of should and supposed to. Yeah. So we do need to use our full range of emotional tools, such as distancing, such as saying, you know what, accepting it. It happened. That's what happened. It is what it is. I don't have to label it as horrible and traumatic. It happened. This labeling of it as traumatic and horrible, this is part of the caring paradigm, which says this is related to your image and how you're going to look and appear. I don't want to seem and appear callous, so I have to deem it to be horrible. And this is just all superiority paradigm, BMN nonsense. No?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, it's just a fact of life. It's reality. And that's it. Reality can be very brutal at times. It's part of life. Yeah. And we have to learn to be accepting of brutality. Doesn't mean I condone brutality or seek it or at ease with it or want to avoid it. No, it's dangerous. But just because it's dangerous, it doesn't mean it's traumatic. And lightning is ridiculously dangerous, but it doesn't have to be traumatic every time I see a lightning strike, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the perception of danger does not necessarily have to equate, or understanding and appreciation of danger. We appreciate things for what they are. It doesn't have to be traumatic, right? So again, we're on the same theme though. Trauma is again also learning how to feel appropriately. Trauma comes when we are feeling inappropriately about something, right? It's exaggerated, excessive feelings of negativity related to something. Again, it's an inability to feel deliberately and to feel deliberately appropriately. So when we look at life as, yes, the pursuit of awareness, but this is what awareness is for. The point of awareness is so we can learn to feel appropriately and feel ideally, feel maximally, feel superlatively. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's all pointless. Without the feeling, it's pointless. Yeah.
Yep.
So we want to learn to feel with our spirit, not just the body. Yes.
Hmm.
And the spirit is a representation, and that's the point of it. If we don't learn to feel appropriately, we have a spirit which is incomplete. It cannot really coexist in itself, because it's lacking, it's missing. And if you don't have the body to get to that state of completeness, it's going to want to come back to finish the job,
Mm.
which makes sense to me. We keep coming back until we learn to have a self-cohesive feeling, a state of feeling that's complete. And then you can exist as spirit because you need no more. You don't have to keep coming back. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It does.
That's pretty huge. It's a pretty huge thing, and it's a theme for me that's a long-term thing. I made my list of aspirations a long time ago. That freaked out my poor friend one time. And on that is, to feel elation, rapture, bliss, ecstasy, a feeling of appropriateness, connectivity. It was all about feeling. And because this, to me, when you think it through to the end, this can only be the end point, right? And particularly if you're going to exist outside of time, you need to have that feeling of completeness, yes? Because a moment is an eternity when there's no time. Same
Mm-hmm.
thing. Yeah. So, but if we think, if you are in time, if you are able to experience, let's say, elation, bliss, ecstasy, whatever is the most superlative feeling, and you have no memory that makes it become boring, it just renews all the time, you can go on for infinity this way, no?
Mm-hmm.
It'll
True.
always be a maximum in each moment. Yeah? And this is the absolute ideal. So it's part of my perfection thinking. If you were to think what actually would be perfection, it's where you're experiencing the maximum feeling over and over and over without any diminishment of it. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So this is pretty cool. Yeah. So if
Yeah.
a goldfish could learn to feel, this would be ideal, right? Because they have that, they only exist. So they need whatever 6 seconds or 4 seconds. They need 6 seconds of absolute maximum, and then if even if there is a gradual, some sort of deterioration, if it starts fresh, doesn't matter. It's always peak. It's always perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is kind of really potent when you think of it in the concept of spiritual existence. When you that drop inside the ocean, you want to learn to maintain your cohesiveness as a drop, but to feel ocean at the same time, so that you can appreciate that you are feeling the perfection of ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So this is where the independence of being comes from, and attunement. Both together need to coexist. Yes, because we don't know what the absolute maximum of feeling is yet. We don't have this idea. But when we say, as far as we can go within this existence, yes, we go for the maximum completeness. We get independence of being and we feel complete, which enables us to maintain our existence, our cohesiveness, and connect and feel the moreness out there. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So this point of I am enough and I am also more becomes a profound necessity for spiritual existence as the drop merging with the ocean
Mm-hmm.
without losing its awareness and identity. Yes. So it's a really profound all over togetherness of the entirety of everything coming together. Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
It's quite a challenge, by the way, to put it into the poem, because some concepts like the word impeccability in that mood of the tone
Mm-hmm.
immediately becomes a little bit out. Yes, it doesn't fit in that, so it's quite a challenge to put it in there. I could obviously write it out in prose, but I'm really keen to actually put all of what I was saying to you now into the poem, in the poem style and format and feel. It's quite something. So what I'll do also with the poem, because it's such a big deal. I mean, the poem has become essentially a kind of a philosophical treaty, right?
Mm-hmm.
Treatise. Um, so what I want to do is, make the poem, make a video to go with it where I'm reading it and put some pictures and stuff in there, and then also to do a second video, which is a capital R reading of the poem, and I want to get a bunch of us together, and then we go through it line by line as we've done, like we did when we did the reading of the
Mhm.
introduction, and to do all the extended understandings, the side paths, the awarenesses coming at it from different angles, the moreness and all this,
Mhm.
so that you can see it. Basically, that would be the annotated version then, yes,
Right.
a capital R reading, and then also to put it in writing as an annotated version. I think this would be pretty cool because I do
Mhm.
feel that in terms of an overview encapsulation of what we're doing, this is now really put this, and because it has that semi-mythical aspect to it, it's got story. Our brains being hardwired for story allows it to connect,
Mhm.
and also it removes, if you put things in a regular prose, philosophical, psychological, like if I had to go and present this at something, yes, but where's your data? Some things don't, they can't be supported by data. So we need to have a forward looking data, which is what myth or law or story is. Yes.
Mhm.
It allows us to jump a little bit over some steps which cannot be supported because they are, we are projecting, we are supposing, and it can't be avoided, but we are looking at our supposition as a most probable.
Mhm.
Yeah. So which is what philosophizing is, I think. No,
I agree.
isn't philosophy really what is most probable, most likely to have benefit?
Mhm.
It's very important. How are you feeling, Eric? How are you feeling?
Tired.
Yeah.
Mostly tired.
Let me ask you real quick on a jump off topic. How did you know that you have COVID?
Someone that Joe was traveling with at the conference tested positive and let everyone know. Um,
Ah,
so Joe went and took a test. He wasn't symptomatic at the time, but he went and got a test, and it came back positive.
wow.
And
And
then,
then you also, did you get a
well,
home test or did you have to go
he
somewhere?
did several home tests. They were sort of inconclusive, so Joe went to Walgreens and got one there, and it came back positive. And then he became symptomatic the next day, I think. And so,
Wow. So is Joe at home now in bed?
he's working, but he's at home. Yeah.
Oh. Does he have enough energy to work?
Yeah, he's been doing okay. He's got a sore throat and stuffy nose and all
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
but
I have noticed that people that have gotten COVID who've been vaccinated have very mild symptoms. I mean, both Cheryl and Donna have had it post vaccination,
yeah,
fairly recently.
I have had it post vaccination as well. This is my
Oh, so
second
this is,
time to have it post
wow,
vaccination,
wow.
but
It
I
seems
have
now that COVID has become kind of like the cold
it
or
yeah, I mean
mild
it's
flu.
I think it's like the flu. Yeah, that's what the
Yeah,
CDC says, I think,
yeah, yeah.
with the
I mean,
vaccine.
it has the same sort of life cycle that you get it and it's sort of not the end of the world, like it's mild and then you get through it and that's it,
Yeah, I mean it
Sickly.
shouldn't if you have the vaccine, it greatly reduces your chance of going to the hospital because of it.
Yes,
So,
yeah, yes. I mean, I have noticed that, like I said, and like Donna said, she just didn't take any medications, anything. She just, rested and took care of herself, and she got through it, no problem.
hmm
And I think Cheryl's been doing the same. Yeah, really interesting. That's why I just stay away from everything. And when I go
yeah.
once a month, when I go out, essentially, I put on the mask and gloves and everything, and I
Mhm.
really take care to be protected. So. Yeah, I'm not keen to get it even mildly. Yeah.
No, it's not fun. The last time I had it, um, it took me out. I mean, it makes me very tired, and I spent a lot of time. Sleep was really the only thing that helped me. Um, so,
Yeah.
which makes you incredibly, I mean, it's good to get rest, but you don't get anything else done.
I
So,
know, which is making me wonder. That's why I asked about the testing. I'm actually even thinking to go and test, even though I'm isolated. I feel similar symptoms now. These are symptoms that I've known from before COVID, and just sort of like flu symptoms. So I don't know. I'm reluctant to go and get tested because that's risky in itself.
it is, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can get some of the at-home tests. We have several but they're not, they're, I mean, they're intended to be rapid type things, and they're not the most accurate. Joe
Wow.
took two when the guy from his team let everybody know that he'd tested positive. He took one, and it's like a pregnancy test. It's like one line or two lines. And
Ah,
if you have one line, you're good. If you have two lines, then you probably have COVID. And Joe's first test came back with like, it had one line, but then it had this like kind of faint half
interesting.
of a second line. And we
Ah,
were like, so then he took another one and it came back negative. And he was like,
wow.
well, I guess it's fine. And I was like, I think we should go to Walgreens and get one of the tests that like takes a couple hours to come back.
Yeah, yeah,
So we did, and that came back positive.
yeah. Well, it's good to be thorough. You know what the scary part here is that if he hadn't been alerted,
Right.
yeah. So now that he has a positive test, what does this job would do for him? I mean, he's still working, obviously, but I'm assuming he doesn't need to specifically.
I'm not really sure. I mean, I assume that he would be okay to take some sick days if he needed to. But I'm not sure. I mean, they like called to find out about if he had been into the office and all of that, which he hadn't because they've sent everybody home, not for COVID, but they sent everybody to work from home again for like a month or two because they're doing work in the building. So,
Oh, wow. So it just happened to be convenient.
yeah, so everybody is back home, so he hadn't been to the office anyway. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they
Very interesting.
just automatic. I mean, obviously they don't say just stay home and don't work. They must leave it up to
Yeah, yeah,
individual.
yeah. The reason I ask is because I'm worried about Joe, working when he needs to be resting.
Yeah, he's really good about
Oh,
knowing, paying attention to
all right,
what he
all right.
needs to do. So he's
Yeah, I mean, as long as
he,
he
he,
doesn't, yeah, abuse that.
he every time my immune system is shot because of endometriosis. So every time
Ah,
it's without fail, every time something like this happens, because I don't ever go anywhere. I don't
yeah,
go out places to get exposed. So like the last time we got COVID, Joe brought it home
yeah,
from the office. He got it at work,
yeah, yeah,
and he gets it, and he has like pretty mild symptoms. Really, I mean, it's not pleasant, but it doesn't really take him out. And then I get it from him, and my symptoms are much
worse.
worse.
Yeah,
And that seemed like last time I
yeah,
lost all taste and smell for like a
yeah,
week, and
yeah,
Joe never, I mean, never had that.
yeah.
I think I ended up going to urgent care at one point, and he was
Ah.
like fine. So,
How does
you
it affect your appetite?
so far it hasn't affected
Oh,
anything. The not being able to taste and smell stuff made
yeah,
eating pretty unpleasant. But for a lot of people that have it, like especially unvaccinated, that really have it at full blow, I think
yeah,
you don't have much of an appetite. You basically
yeah,
just sleep most of the
yeah.
time,
Well,
and
that's just usual with feeling sick, you lose
yeah.
appetite. I just been feeling bloated. I don't know why. I
Oh,
feel full
interesting.
all the time.
Hmm.
Yeah, very peculiar
Interesting.
thing. But I have an infection from the tonsil, and
Hmm.
it spreads to the gland, and it's in the jaw, in the gum here. So, this is it's an ongoing thing that as it surges and comes and goes. When I don't sleep well, of course, then it aggravates that. So
Right.
cycle there. But I work hard at sleeping. Let's put it that way. However, I do notice there is a deeper logic to it, particularly here in the jaw. It's on the left side principally. Now, for whatever reason, when I do, the meditations where I'm focusing on feeling the tensions in the body and specifically making those tensions feel the way I want to do. And in other words, the focus on feeling that feeling of rightness or a completeness or impeccability, however you describe it. And my attention is almost always drawn to the left side because the left side has more constriction to it, and there's a big difference between the two. And in this, with the infection on the left side here now, it forces me to pay attention to tensions and constrictions and feelings in the body that I don't otherwise feel or are aware of. So in part of what I'm trying to say is part of, and the same thing with the bloating in the stomach, it's forcing me to pay attention to the abdomen, which is now, is this started kind of from when I started paying attention to will. So this to me, when I think of, oh, I'm feeling this way, I'm not 100% in my health, but there's a greater makes sense logic to it. And this I found every time to be profound. So when I feeling a bit off physically, I start to really investigate the feelings that I'm feeling with the eye and the understanding and the capital H hearing of saying, what is it that the universe, my deeper awareness, whatever, is trying to make me aware of that I cannot otherwise be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
That I need this in other words. And so not, that's not a hard and fast need, but likely I'm missing something and I'm not getting it. And I need this sort of clue to open the door to this. And I have found this to be very, very rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. To pay attention to what is now in my awareness that otherwise isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, dealing with swelling and in the infection itself, it puts a pressure on things, right? And this causes me to have to feel and have that tensionality in ways that I didn't feel before. And it's helped me to connect through the left side, which is where it is now, connect more to the throat as a center point for initiating feeling.
Interesting.
Yeah, rather than the jaw or the eyes. Yes. So and I do feel that the idea is to feel with your entire body rather than have feeling be initiated and
Ah,
controlled by the face.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
Because now you have a consequential feeling, right? You get a mood in your face and then the body sort of follows, but it's always a bit weak and diluted. Whereas if you feel with the entirety of yourself, this is a much more potent feeling. And if you can recall times when you felt with the entirety of your body, the power and the intensity of that was much more potent. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess when you're feeling ill, you feel more with the entirety of your body sometimes, right?
Yeah, could be.
I mean, when you have a body ache as opposed to just feeling it in your throat or in your eyes, you see what I mean? It's making us aware that, there's all sorts of different ways to feel. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like a little crash course in feeling. Yes.
Yeah, true.
And how to shift stuff, like, okay, you got a sore throat, you've got to do things to, in terms of shifting your tensions and awareness to lessen that feeling. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's massive feeling education. Yeah.
True.
How is the energy when it comes to reading? You got energy for reading?
Not a whole lot. I
I
usually end
hear
up
you.
falling asleep a couple pages in, but
Yeah, I hear you. I listen to the story, and I like listening. I put it on speaker on the phone with Libby, so I can lie down and don't have the headset in the way. And I don't mind falling asleep to the story. Okay, I lose some parts of the story, but it's very soothing and very relaxing. Yeah, yeah. At least for me, anyway.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Wow, wow, wow. And just amazing to me how life takes its twists and turns. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. So I'm really trying to make the point though to use this to see COVID as a boon.
Right.
Yes. not it's not maybe the funnest of boons, but and sometimes when I've had like indigestion, boy, I'm in an intense pain, but I always learned a tremendous amount.
Mm-hmm.
Not the experience I want to repeat. But the way I'm feeling now, same thing. I learn a lot when I really go inside and feel it from alternative perspectives,
Mm-hmm.
and really experiment with exploring, changing how I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite profound. It gives me multiple options. It's quite a big deal. See, my throat's also struggling. I'm pretty much the same thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I unless you have something that you really want to share, where I can just listen for a while, but I don't want to stress your throat. I think maybe we just
Yeah.
end a bit earlier.
And
Yes.
I just ran out of water, so that's going to be a problem for me too.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, this is a really, like I said, this is a really interesting subject that I definitely want to
Yeah.
revisit when I'm able to really
Yeah.
be at full
So
mental
yeah.
capacity.
So what I'd like to do when we get back next time is to on what I was saying about the the poem, and how it's going with that whole spiritual evolution, the path, the journey, the aspirant's journey, and this. I'm keen to hear your deeper thoughts on that when we go
Mm.
over. So something to contemplate and reflect on as you're lying there. I'm very keen to hear more. Bina, we were talking about something else actually, which just comes up a little bit here, also just related. So let me share before we go here. Um, I was, I put together that separate program, the pre-course taking program, right? All the essentials of what to do, how to take the programs, what's needed. But I thought that I was thinking about attention and what it is that holds our attention. I was talking about dead time to Bina. That for me, when I watch a TV show, for instance, right? If you're applying a bit of anticipation and extrapolation, boy, there's tons of dead time in this because you know what's coming. Okay, let's say they're sitting and talking and there's a knock on the door. Well, from the moment there's the first knock to when they actually open the door, whatever happens in between is all dead time, right? Because
Mm.
they got to walk there, whatever. I don't need to actually be watching that second by second. Now, most people don't actually watch what's happening.
Mm.
They are listening to their thoughts, their feelings. Oh, who's this? What's it going to be? And, they got all sorts of stuff going. But if you don't have that going on, there's tons of dead time in between any kinds of communication, which you can fill with other stuff. And in this, though, it made me think too that when it comes to enlisting the attention of others, like this is something I deliberately do, and on Zoom, I make I'm completely focused on pertinence and relevance for you. Yes. Because as long as I'm communicating whatever I'm doing, if I can make it pertinent and relevant to you, I'm going to engage your attention. Right? Because attention is connected, pertinence and relevance connected to interest. We are interested in what's pertinent and relevant to us. Yes. And that's where our attention goes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So and the more we can connect and have our attention held, the more we absorb and get the totality. And this is where the repeat backs especially become so potent, because now we are forced to connect to all of the steps in the chain. You
Mm-hmm.
can't skip any, especially when it comes to new and profound ideas. They're not like stuff where you can just have that extrapolation and jump and continue. In normal story, you can jump steps and still continue. But when it comes to a chain of, one thing leading to each other and following from that, you need each step in the chain, in the path.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this is where the repeat backs come from, so that you make sure that you own the whole chain and it's yours, not just in memory.
Mm-hmm.
But then it started me to think that what is the pertinence and relevance needed when it comes to somebody who is not yet doing the program? In other words, how to engage their interest. In other words, the pertinence and relevance then to get them to connect, it basically comes down to promise, does it not?
Mm.
They
Interesting.
can't know what the program is and have the value. They can take our word for it, but they still have to take our word for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a risk, in other words, because they've done other programs. Wow. And like a bubble go up into my nasal passages.
Mm.
Yeah. they're taking a risk because they've done other programs and it turned out to be a dud and a waste of time, right? So how do you know it's going to be worthwhile? So here it comes down to the the promises, and the promises therefore need to be pertinent and relevant. So Bina started to write a few things, and she sent it to me in an email, and we'll go over it next time. But it's also something I'm like, for instance, peace of being. Yes, when Sue came on, after having met with me in person in Sedona in the workshop there, I sent a follow-up email. She came on, and she asked Bina, well, what did you get out of it? And Bina said, peace of being.
Mm,
And Sue said, ah, that's what I want. Right
mm,
now, for me, I never identified as a promise peace of being. It's not something that I feel a strong need or connectivity to. But for both Bina and Sue, this was number one.
mhm, mhm.
Right. And I'm from your nodding there, I feel peace of being is a big deal for you also, yes?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. As in terms of an attraction, or at least maybe now, not anymore, because I think you probably have it already. And once we have it, it's not so much of a lure, but maybe if you think back to
Right,
before you came
right.
on, what you were looking for, peace of being, and she had a few other things. So I'm keen to hear from you. Okay, again, please take this, if you have energy or not. What you feel would be appropriate, in inverted commas, promises for new participants,
Mm,
thinking of your own pre-program state of being and mindset, that of Kay, other people that other participants, and others not doing this, that you feel, okay, if they were to come, what would draw them? What would make it worthwhile for them? What would grab them?
mhm,
Because I live in such a different reality, like the peace of being, it doesn't connect to me as a promise. You
mm,
see what I mean? So I
interesting.
want to add those to the start of that pre-taking.
Mhm,
Yes, and now your interest is engaged. Okay, how do you get to actually accomplish peace of being, mood, whatever, confidence, whatever the thing is.
mhm.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So it's kind of a potent topic also, because it connects to our own motivations and what we are looking to feel. Yes.
Mhm,
This is very important, what we are looking to feel, or in the case of trauma, what we are looking to unfeel.
mhm.
Yeah. Isn't that something?
It is.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very powerful. All right. I don't want to end on a negative note where we've run out of energy. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm very cognizant of that. Part of capital H hearing. Very important. So as loath as I am to say goodbye early, I really am. I do think it's good time for us to end. Yes.
I think so. Yeah. I like I said, I really want to be fully present for this discussion. It's a
Yeah.
really big one
Yeah.
for me. So,
Yeah. It is. It is. But at least it's got a lot of grist for your mill there now, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Very, very, very cool. Very cool. Yeah. I don't actually know what grist is in actuality, by the way.
Yeah, that's a good question.
It is a good question. All right. All right. Marvelous. Marvelous. Oh, I'm so pleased you came though, Erica. So pleased
Me
you came.
too. Yeah.
I was really missing you on the weekend for whatever reason, but I guess, I've noticed this, that's when Joe came home, no?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and obviously the stuff was all then and there. So somehow something connected, I've
Yeah.
noticed it before. So,
Yeah.
all right. Very interesting. Very interesting. Subliminal connectivity.
Yes.
Yeah. Brilliant. Brilliant. All
All
right. All right. We'll see you on Thursday. We'll see you on
right.
Thursday.
Sounds good. I hope you get to feeling better as well.
Yes, you too. You too. We'll conjoin and
Okay. I like it. I like
bye
it.
bye,
All right.
Erica. Bye
Thanks.
bye. Bye
I'll
bye. Bye
talk to
bye.
you soon.
Always a pleasure. Bye bye, Erica. Bye
Bye.
bye. Bye bye. Bye bye. End this.